Hello everyone. This is Franklin Mvasha. We're going to be talking about the digital landscape of Brazil. Uh, in this presentation, we're going to delve into the legal aspects of social media in Brazil. Brazil, as we all know, is the largest country in South America. It is known for its cultural diversity and natural beauty. Brazil has a very complex and dynamic legal system that regulates its social media use. In this presentation, we will cover some of the key legal issues that affect um, social media users in Brazil, such as privacy, freedom of expression, and cybercrime. We'll also discuss some of the recent and upcoming changes in the legal framework, as well as some of the notable court cases that have shaped the social media landscape in Brazil. Finally, we'll highlight some of the challenges and opportunities that social media governance poses for Brazil and its people. In the coming slides, we're going to further discuss some of the current legislations in Brazil. These legislations, such as Marco Civil Internet, which is basically about internet use and how it is used by citizens of Brazil, followed by the data protection law, which was formulated in 2018, and laws on defamation and hate speech. We're going to also talk about how the Brazilian government how the Brazilian government reacts to online and offline offenses when it comes to defamation and hate speech. Furthermore, we're going to also talk about the potential legislation in Brazil, the online harms legislation, which involves the strategies to investigate as well as tackle crime, cybercrime, how cybercrime can be reported, the cybersecurity laws, and how it's ever evolving and improving. So over the years, the Brazilian authorities have had issues with social media. One of the cases that was really a controversial conversation in Brazil was the Facebook versus the Brazilian authorities in 2016. The Brazilian authorities needed to investigate a drug trafficking crime, and they needed access to WhatsApp in order to see the messages being sent between parties that were involved in this crime. But due to the user privacy policy of Facebook, this information and user data were not able to be shared, and it caused a big ruckus in Brazil. Secondly, the fake news and electoral disinformation of 2018, where the fake news disrupted the election process of the Brazilian government in 2018. It was done through WhatsApp. Lots of misinformation were being passed across the social network app, and it affected the outcome of the general election. Basha.
Thank you, Frank. So I'll be taking over from this section where we're discussing about the major court cases and lawsuits that happened in Brazil. So, speaking about Marco Civil da Internet, which we spoke about before in one of our slides, it can be thought of as a groundbreaking legal framework, also a law which kind of breaks down and explains how civilians should be behaving in, say, a social media platform or a social media space. So, when it comes to Marco Civil da Internet, it has four primary pillars. And for the four primary pillars, we're talking about firstly, we're talking about net neutrality. So, net neutrality here means that when internet service providers are able to view information that is posted by, say, civilians, they're not allowed to in any way enclose it and hide it when it comes to broadcasting, which brings us to freedom of expression. This particular net neutrality it kind of complies with the whole freedom of expression ideology, but at the same time, when it comes to freedom of expression or freedom of speech, it's important that civilians do not partake in any kind of hate speech or any kind of cybercrime or cyberbullying. When it comes to this particular law, it also talks about privacy and data protection. So, privacy here primarily means that any kind of data that a civilian hands over to a social media platform should not be manipulated or changed or be used against them. And even if the information were to be used, it has to be taken and used only with some sort of consent from the particular user. And when it comes to data protection is a very broad space when it comes to the Brazilian government and the legislation. And here it also expands to cloud services. So let's say a social media platform that is local to Brazil holds any kind of data in other cloud centers. There are also very strict rules about how this needs to be handled and safeguarded. Next one, please. Another issue are court cases and lawsuits that are very common and is pretty seriously taken is defamation cases. And defamation cases happen online as well as offline, but the online ones have a far more outreach and the consequences are major. It leads to a loss of social status, and a lot of individuals have also reported to have mental health issues due to this. And the Brazilian government takes defamation issues pretty seriously, which means a lot of times individuals who cyberbully others, they end up being in jail, or sometimes they have to pay hefty fines as well. Next slide, please. When it comes to reporting practices to authorities, it's a very simple process. Any civilian could walk into a police station and file a complaint when it comes to Brazil. It could be a visitor, it could be a citizen, it does not matter here. As long as you're in Brazil, you are protected in the social media space. So when it comes to data protection, we're talking about how data is stored, how it is manipulated, and how it's analyzed, say, for data analytics. So in such cases, the National Data Protection Authority and its laws and legislation is what comes to play. And when it comes to cyber crimes like hacking or maybe cyberbullying, the cybercrime reporting portal is where a citizen or a visitor would go to complain about this particular issue. Also, when it comes to the social media space, which is a very important discussion for us, it's important for us to know that the Brazilian Consumer Protection and Defense Institute works in coordination with the citizens to make sure that everyone is aware of their rights, and they also have the actual training to go through in case of any issue of social media. Next one, please. Which brings us to almost the conclusion of our presentation, which is additional considerations. So how does the Brazil's legislation or social media governance compare to that of first world countries like US or Canada? So when it comes to Canada, I would say when it comes to first world countries, it is pretty similar to how it is in Brazil, and because all these countries are primarily within America. When it comes to Canada, we have the Office of the Commissioner, Privacy Commissioner of Canada, who does laws and who primarily studies and makes actions so as to make sure individuals are protected in the social media space. And when it comes to US, there's the Office of Federal Trade, which works around the social media safety and policies. When it comes to public awareness and education, we're looking at making sure that every citizen and regardless of their country, is very aware and knowledgeable about how to safeguard their identity as well as their privacy in a social media space. And the future trend in this situation is to make sure that every cybercrime is studied and punished just as serious as any offline crime. We get onto the Q&A section of our presentation. This is our first question. And the next one too. We would be happy to answer any questions you have regarding our presentation. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.